Hi, it's Mrs. Sargent. Hopefully by now you've watched my video about citing sources and being able to find the works cited citation if you're using library database sources or checking the Purdue OWL for how to use sources and write up the works cited citation. Today I want to talk about using that research in your essay and in text citations. So you always want your essay to be your own voice and your own ideas, and just use the research as support for your ideas. It shouldn't replace what you say, it should just support what you say. And make sure that your information relates to the point that you're trying to make. Make sure that the sources you're using are relevant, that they're updated, that they are credible sources. You can use sources to add details, you can make general comments more specific, you can give examples, you can provide expert opinions by using sources. As you know, plagiarism is presenting someone else's ideas or words as if they were your own. The most important thing is to make sure that you credit those sources. And let us know where that information is coming from. So in order to do that, you need to use in-text citations or parenthetical in-text citations, and then also provide a works cited page. You don't need to document common knowledge, which is information that most people who are high school graduates would know, or your own ideas. If you still have a question about what common knowledge is, you can check the Helpful Websites tab and read more about it there. You need to make sure that you document any information from an outside source, whether you quote, paraphrase, or summarize. That information has to have a parenthetical in-text citation. You're all familiar with the summary. We wrote summaries, taking a couple of paragraphs worth of information and distilling it down into a couple of sentences as a summary. It needs a citation. If you're paraphrasing, that information might have 3 or 4 sentences, and you're going to rewrite those 3 or 4 sentences in your own words using the source information, but rewriting it as if it were your own. But you still need to give credit to that. Directly quoting something means copying it word for word. And again, you need to cite the source. So make sure you're keeping track of where you're getting your information so that you can put those in-text citations in your paper. Direct quotes, as I said, exact words. The words are set off in quotation marks. You want to use direct quotes sparingly. I would say no more than 10% of your paper should be directly quoted material. Use it only when you can't say it, when that quote says it better than you ever could. So maybe a statistic or maybe a quote from an expert on something. Don't just recopy somebody's argument, just pick the pieces that you think are going to be most effective in what you're writing. Always make sure that your own words introduce the source. They should always lead into and out of every paragraph. Quotations should fit with your own style. They should be punctuated correctly. And instead of just saying, using author tags or signal phrases that say John Smith says blah blah blah. If John Smith is just some guy who wrote the book, it doesn't really matter what he says. But if John Smith is an expert in the field of study, then it's more important that this information is coming from him. So if the person who wrote it has some credentials that lend credibility or ethos to what you have to say, then definitely include that information. Otherwise, you can just say, according to a recent report, or a recent article said, things like that. So in order to avoid plagiarism, you need to make sure that you credit your source and that you've copied information exactly. If you need to change a word or change verbs to past tense so that it matches your style, you can use brackets. That lets a reader know that this is you, the writer, who has added this information in. If you need to leave something out, you can use ellipses, but please make sure that what is left accurately reflects the original meaning. You don't want to create a situation where you've taken something out of context. Some more things to keep in mind when we're talking about paraphrasing. It's your own words and sentence structure. You can change the punctuation, the verb tenses, but you want to make sure that the meaning, the original meaning, stays the same. Again, avoiding plagiarism. Make sure that you are citing your sources. If you need to reuse chunks of words or phrases from the original, make sure that you put those in quotation marks. When we talk about internal documentation in MLA, that means we use parenthetical in-text citations. Basically, that means you've got the author's last name and a page number, and that this matches an entry on your works cited page. If you mention the author's name, if you're using an author tag or a signal phrase, and you mention the author's name, then all you need here is the page number. A lot of times we use sources that don't have page numbers, especially if you're finding information online. So maybe if it's a shorter source, you could use a paragraph number. You would do PAR3 and put that instead of a page number. If you've got something longer, I would never expect you to count the number of paragraphs, in a 50-paragraph essay or something. So in that case, you can just repeat the author's last name. Even though you said it here, repeat it here, please, because this way, when I see this, I know that's the end of your source information, and then this is what comes after is going to be your own writing. So that helps me differentiate. If you didn't use the author's last name, then you're going to put it here, author's last name, page number. If the source doesn't have an author, then you would move to the title. So again, if I say the title of my article here, I'm just going to use a page number. If I haven't used the title of my article, I've got title and page number. If you've got a really long article title, you can, here in your in-text citation, you can just cut that down to maybe the first couple words. But again, I need to be able to flip to your works cited and see an entry that starts with gun control. We don't use the word page or P or PP abbreviations. There's no comma between the last name and the page number. If you're talking about the title of an article, it's in quotation marks. The sentence period goes after the parenthetical citation. If you've got a quote, then you would put the quotation marks, the parenthetical citation, and the sentence period. Your in-text citation should correspond exactly to your works cited page. So any source that you use in your essay, I should be able to find on your works cited page. Anything listed on your works cited, I should be able to find a reference in the text of your essay. Your works cited page is a separate page at the end of the paper. And again, it should be in MLA format. And what that means is the title works cited looks exactly like this. It's at the top of the page, centered. The whole entire page is double spaced. There's no extra space between entries or anything. The sources are alphabetized by the author's last name. If there's no author, then you alphabetize by the title of the article, not counting a, an, and the. If your citation goes on to a second or third line, then those lines indent 5 spaces. That's a hanging indent. And you can Google MLA format works cited page and see a sample of a works cited page if you're not sure what that should look like. Some other basic rules for documentation, titles of books, journals, magazines, newspapers, any big item is italicized. Any small item, like the title of an article or the title of a poem, things like that, are in quotation marks. If you have any questions, you can check MLA style. You want to make sure that you're following 8th edition. You can Google it. You can check with me. You can check with one of the writing tutors. This would be what a works cited citation might look like. Again, this came from a library database, so make sure that you're using the citation tool for that. If you're trying to create your own citations, make sure you double check and make sure that they're right. And as always, if you've watched to the end of the video, make sure you send me an email so that I can give you extra credit.